Hi everyone, it's Blacksmith MMA here. I wanted to make a video talking about the main card for UFC 299, getting loads of questions about it, and it seems to be a card that's just teed up, just like the last two events where we've had massive winners. There's a lot of potential to make a lot of money here, and there's a lot of potential to lose a ton of money because there are a lot of fighters on this card, as all large cards have, who have a lot of hype behind them. What that means is a lot of bettors, I used the term casual the other day and someone wasn't very happy about that. I don't mean casual as in a casual fans, that term is used as like a toxic insult in the MMA community. I mean casual bettors, people who bet for fun, who don't really do much research into the sport, don't really understand the sport, they don't understand line value, most importantly. Because when we look at the main card, there are a lot of names there that to me, when I was more of a casual MMA fan, I would have bet some of these fighters and just gone, oh yeah, that fight is really good. I sort of know who they're fighting. I don't think they're that good. And that's because I didn't understand the stylistic matchup. I didn't really understand the opponents who had a lower name. Even though I watched every fight, I just didn't study the sport. So I didn't understand the nuances of it. What this means is the fighters who have a lot of hype, who have a lot of name value, who get bet on by the public, their odds get pushed down, so they become worse value, and their opponent's odds go higher, so they become better value. That's how the last two events, or the first two events of last month, we made an absolute fortune, over 20 units and over 30 units, both events, and that was by making contrarian picks against favourites. A lot of people gave us a lot of hassle on Twitter, saying they were stupid picks. The truth is, when you're betting like this, you don't even need them all to hit because you're betting with good value. And that's the way you do it as a professional. You're just trying to end the day with positive units. You're not trying to win every single bet. If you see odds that are just really crazy high, but you think the fighter's going to lose, but you think he does win a good majority of the time, and you work out the implied probability between the odds and what you actually think their potential is to win the fight, if there's a disparity there in your favour, you take the bet. It doesn't mean you think the fighter's going to win, and that prediction is, you know, one that you're saying, okay, this fighter's going to win, that's my prediction, that's why I'm betting them. You're betting them because the odds are so juicy. Over time, if you take those bets, you're always going to make profit. So that's what we're looking to do. With that in mind, let's look at the main card. So, if we're going to go, I'm going to go from Curtis Blaydes and Jailton Almedida. Blaydes is a really dangerous fighter. He's been around for a while. A lot of people know him as a really strong wrestler at heavyweight. He is a bad matchup for a lot of that division. But if you look at his record, he's a bad matchup for people who are really, I'll say, outside the top 10 and below. Maybe some of the top 10. He's definitely beaten some very good fighters. I'm not saying he can't win them. But when he gets up to like the premier fighters of the division, you know, the ones who are potential title contenders, he always comes unstuck. At heavyweight, there is this situation where fighters who are good athletes, who have a lot of talent, they're big, strong, powerful, and they've got a bit of grappling know-how, they can stuff a takedown, or their hands are so powerful, they only need to stuff one or two because they only have to connect a few times to get the finish. Jailton Almedida is one of these sort of fighters. He's got a very good, well-rounded skill set. Obviously, in this fight, he's going to be looking to strike, but I think he's got very good grappling and good takedown defense, good enough to not only avoid the takedown, but good enough to also not let it affect his striking. Sometimes with wrestlers, the actual weapon isn't always the takedown, it's the threat of the takedown that sets up the strikes. That's how Khabib knocked Conor McGregor down, you know, faked the takedown, threw that massive right hand and dropped him. With this situation, Blaydes can always get him down and grind a decision out, but Almedida is going to have 3 rounds. He probably won't need those 3 rounds. He's going to have 3 rounds to land a punch, and I think he will land it fairly quickly because he's very powerful, very quick. If the fight goes beyond 2 rounds, that's when we might see him fade, but he is a good athlete. I think he can survive, and I think he wins this fight. I think he wins it quick, maybe even by first round knockout, maybe early second round after lighting Curtis up. In heavyweight, we see a lot of times fighters being very cautious of each other and doing this thing where they're dancing around, they're trying to get reads, and then at the end of round 1, they start landing, and the fight almost gets finished. It happens all the time, and then they come out and they get confident, and then they just spark their opponent at the start of round 2. A lot of people are betting Balydes. I always monitor people in my group, people I know who are fans of the sport who don't really understand the line value or don't study tape. So many people are on Balydes from that camp. Not that it's a wrong take per se, because Balydes can win, but that kind of tells me as well the value is on Almedida, and that's where we should be going, and that the books want us to bet Balydes. So looking at the odds right now, they're about even. And I think most people are going to take Balydes at even because they recognise the name. They know that he's got a difficult style, and he's fought and beaten a lot of good people in the UFC. He's been around for a while. People do bet like that. They say, I know Balydes, Almedida. I kind of remember him, but I don't really know who he is yet. He hasn't got much hype, and I think he should have more hype. So that's a good example. So moving on, we've got Petr Yan, Yadong. This is going to be a really good fight. You've got Petr Yan, who is an elite fighter, but he's lost 3 in a row, I think, now. So he's fighting really for his place at the top of the division. I don't think he'd get cut if he loses, because look at who he's been fighting. He's been fighting the best of the best. Yadong, very exciting new prospect. He's got a lot of hype behind him because he's a power puncher. This is the other thing about hype, you know. I think Lucrative MMA explained this in the video. Sometimes hype is justified, so you can't just fade hype all the time. You've got to know when the hype is justified. This is one of those cases where Song has some hype behind him because he's exciting and people like watching a fighter who finishes their opponents, especially at the lower weight classes where you don't see that as much. Yan has been on a skid, so a lot of fans who just tune in, watch the fights, don't really read into it too much. They'll just remember, oh yeah, Yan, he hasn't won a fight in ages. Song, oh yeah, he's knocking people out. Of course he's going to win. And you see the value in the lines. Yan is actually a favourite, which I think is more of a reflection on where the lines were set, but also the fact that a lot of people do recognise his name as well and will be backing him. But I think a lot of people are going to be jumping on Song at plus money. I think Song is the better pick. Personally, I would avoid this fight though. It's extremely close. If Yan is clever, he's going to mix in his grappling, and I think he can win a fairly grueling points decision. It being a 3-rounder favours Song, to be honest. But Yan is very good at winning rounds, and he's got good, not just ring generalship, but he's got a good IQ, like good fight IQ to understand it when he's losing a round, how to put an exclamation mark on the end of it. And he may frustrate Song and grind him down. It may be that he's got a 3-fight skid and his head is just gone because it's been so long since he's won. It depends. We won't really know until we see him in there. His trajectory's on the downward trend, but he's due for a turnaround. It doesn't mean that's going to happen, but it means there is this possibility here. I feel like this is one where a lot of people would bet Song and Yan will end up winning a controversial decision, but I would avoid that. And as we go on to the next fight, we've got Gilbert Burns, Della, Maddalena. This fight's kind of mad to me. I'm a big Gilbert Burns fan. I like his style. He's very athletic. He's very powerful. He's got good striking. He's got great grappling as well, but he's getting on. He's got a lot of miles on the clock. And also, I think if we look at his last few fights, he has had some very good fights and he's looked very good. He looked really good in his last 2. His last 3 actually, he looked really good. But there have been some things I've seen in there where he just doesn't seem as sharp, and I feel like, oh, if he was in there with a more talented fighter, I think they would get in on him. And I think it's been because of who he's been fighting, because the matchups have been good, that he's looked a bit better and he's not really suffered, any real damage compared to, some of his previous fights. So Della Maddalena obviously is a ferocious striker, very powerful, very professional, methodical. He uses body shots, and body shots are so important in MMA because there's a lot of fighters who've got very good chins who actually will just tank damage. Like Burns has got a pretty good chin. He's taken some big hits where he stayed standing. But fighters would do that and just walk their opponents down. With a body shot, you can't do that. When you land a perfect shot on the liver, on the pancreas on the other side, it's just like a light switch that someone turns off. Your body just drops, you're done. You can't you can't fake it. Some fighters will sort of do this thing where they get hit and they go, and they'll tense up and they'll try and put a poker face on, kind of like what happened with Usman when Covington body kicked him, but Goddard stopped it and said it was a groin strike, which it wasn't. Usman just pulled his shorts up really high, very clever, little sneaky technique there, but that saved him, and that's what happens. Sometimes you can put a poker face on. I can't remember who it was now. There was a fighter who fought with Matt Serra, Ray Longo camp a while ago, who had this. I think he landed a body shot on his opponent, rushed in for the finish, and his opponent, with his last ounce of strength, threw a right cross and knocked him out. So it's frustrating because that's what a fighter I really like, even though he's probably not the most technical, but a really fun dude from New York. So it's one of these situations where when you hurt someone to the body, I mean, they have maybe an opportunity to try and blag it, but 9 times out of 10 they're going to get finished if someone sticks it on them. And I'll talk more about that later with the main event, because there is a similar situation there that's not being talked about. Or actually, I have seen, I don't know if it's Liam's MMA, I'm probably getting his name wrong. I think he may have talked about this as well, and I was really pleased that I saw that. So he's someone to search. I might stick his channel in my in the description if I remember the actual channel name for him. But there are some similarities in other fights, and this is one where I see Jack Della Maddalena going to the body, and Burns, who's normally quite durable and robust, is going to really struggle to take those shots. It may be that he survives and it ends up being a bit of a beating. It may be that Jack Della Maddalena just walks across there and just drops him very quickly. I think Burns, at this point in his career, he's due to have a fight where he gets pieced up and gets hurt by some of the better fighters. And it's almost like he's a victim of his success, because he's had some really good fights recently and the level of competition is going to go up. And I just don't think he's there anymore. So as much as I love him, I think this is going to be a pretty brutal loss. And Jack Della Maddalena, his style is very good for MMA. He's someone who's using body shots to its full potential. And even if he doesn't land the body shots, the threat of them is going to be so strong that he's going to end up connecting with the head, and he may go body head, and that may be the way that he gets a knockout, because it's always the one you don't see that puts you down. So I'm on Jack Della Maddalena. I think a lot of people will bet Burns, because as an underdog, when you look at his past fights, he has performed very well and he's got a good skill set. He certainly looks like a good value if you're looking at it as someone who's not studied both fighters. So I think a lot of money is going to come in on Burns from the more mainstream fans, but I think a lot of bigger bets are going to come in on Jack Della Maddalena, which I think is pushing the line down slightly. It's at 1.62 at the moment. It was at 1.68 earlier in the week, so it's gone down a little bit, but not too much. Moving on, Kevin Holland, Michael Venom Page, another fight that I think you should avoid betting on. There's so many unknowns here. MVP is a fantastic striker, he's got this great karate stance that he's lit people up with. He's seriously injured some people. Like, you look at Cyborg, how he caves his skull in. But this is the thing, in combat sports, it is quite easy to look really good, and I'm not taking anything away from previous opponents, but they've not been UFC level caliber. And Kevin Holland, said it in the press conference. He was like, you're in the UFC now, it's different. And it is, it's true. It's like if you go into your local boxing gym and you look at the most talented amateur there, they're going to look like an absolute stud when they're in there with everyone else. It's going to look like they're unbeatable. But that doesn't mean they're not going to get smoked by a good professional. That's a bit of an extreme comparison. But MVP has been, I think he's been picking his fights for the last, 10 years fairly carefully, where he's been on the come up. And there's always been questions of, is he facing competition at the level that he should be facing? And he started to in the last few years. He has fought legitimate, really good contenders. Who given him some losses as well. So he has been up in the competition, but there was a period of almost stagnation where he wasn't going up as much as he should do. Now he's in the UFC right at the end of his career at 37. This could be a big upset. A lot of people are on him, loads of people, a lot of young people seem to be all over him. Like, they think he's almost a bit like the Sean O'Malley effect. It's like the younger generation love his style, the highlight reel. You know, he's quite good at promoting and marketing himself. So there is some hype behind him. Obviously, strikers get more hype behind them as well. He's fighting Kevin Holland, who, if he goes strike for strike with him, it will be a long night for Kevin. Wonder Boy, like the Wonder Boy fight is the best comparison because Wonder Boy has a karate style as well. It's kind of similar, and he kept letting him up. Holland said, no, let's fight, you know, it was great for the fans, you know, it was an exciting fight, but it was not a smart thing to do. If you want to win the fight, use your grappling against someone who is a striking specialist, because he's got some good athleticism, he's got some submissions, and we know he's got very heavy hands. You know, he knocked Jacare out with a back fist off his back, you know. He can knock anyone out if he gets them down. And I think he can get MVP down. It's just a complete unknown if he will use his grappling or if he'll try and please the fans again by standing up. And there's some things I don't like about Holland as well. In some of his fights, we've seen it in the Apex, where he talks non-stop, like he's, you know, it's like he's got ADHD and he can't stop talking, and he's talking to the fighter, he's talking to his coaches, he's talking to Dana, and it's just like, you know, your mindset is not there. You know, he is an elite fighter, you know, he's a UFC, fairly high-level UFC fighter, so I'm not taking anything away from the guy, but that mindset component is probably the thing that's going to hold him back from becoming a true elite contender. Because if you're focusing on talking to your coach, talking to your opponent, talking to Dana White, you're not focused on the task at hand. Like, you know, you're just there to have fun and make a bit of money, or are you there to be the best fighter you can be and become a champion? So that's another thing that concerns me. And the coaches almost seem to be like, oh, for God's sake, you know, we're so used to dealing with this. So in training, is he really listening to what people are telling him? Is he listening to his coaches? You know, to me, it seems like there is a lack of mental discipline there. Not hating on people who have ADHD or anything like that. It's something I've suffered with in the past. But do you know what? It took me doing a lot of exercises of concentration and reading and focusing. You know, I had to do it at the time, just read a page of a book at a time, up until the point where I just would read a whole book. It's something you have to work on, and it just, for me, it seems like there is an unwillingness to work on the mental aspect of his game. MVP is someone who really takes everything seriously, so there is a disparity here that could get him finished if he doesn't take him down. Also, if he's not paying attention and not listening to the advice from his corner, not listening to what his coaches and training partners are telling him in training camp, you know, it may be that he's just not committing to being the best technician as he can be. So he's got a lot of physical gifts. He can knock him out. MVP can finish him as well. So this is a fight to absolutely fade, I'd say, because anything can happen. We don't really know with the step up in competition. Getting on, we got the first fight away from the main event, which is Poirier Denis. Again, Poirier is someone who a lot of the, you know, the casual fan base, a lot of people who are casual bettors, people who do not really think much about their bets, they just do it for a bit of fun, they'll put their money on Poirier because they'll see he's at really big odds. They'll say, Poirier's, you know, he's a badass, he beat McGregor, you know, how can he be at those odds? That's crazy, let's go, we're going to make a load of money. And they don't really understand Benoit Denis. There's also this thing going around about him having a staph infection on his face. That's getting blown up to be more than it is. It could be a factor, don't get me wrong, but I think there are a few things here to look at. Poirier, great fighter, you know, very good record, beat some really, really top competition. Very elite fighters he's beaten and been in there with. But if you look at his losses, it's always been people who mix in the takedowns. This is what you should be doing. When you're looking at two fighters and you're trying to figure out who's going to win, you want to be looking at who's beaten them before and how do those styles compare with their opponent this time. And the thing that people who've beaten him have in common is they've all mixed in the wrestling. Now, I saw someone say, yeah, it took Khabib 4 rounds to beat him. Yeah, fair enough, but that was years ago. That was a different Dustin Poirier. You know, he's getting on in his career now. There's so many different factors involved in there as well. Khabib is someone who was very methodical and took his time as well. He didn't really mind. You know, he knew he was going to get the finish in the end. So there is a lot of elements. And also, he had the undefeated record, so there's another part which is be very, very careful. You don't want to lose that record and get clipped. You know, you don't want to get clipped and lose anyway, but even more so when you've got this record to protect. We've seen it happen with fighters all the time, where they become overly cautious when they've gotten a big run. And fair enough, they should. It's your job as the opponent to take it to them. But what we're going to see here is Poirier, who's on a downwards trajectory, facing Benoit St. Denis on an upwards trajectory, who's got really relentless grappling. He's a relentless athlete. He's going to be very powerful. His cardio's going to be great. He's going to struggle in the striking against Poirier, I believe, especially in closer range with the boxing. But the threat of the takedown, I think, is something that Benoit St. Denis is going to use to kind of equalise the striking. I don't think they're going to be completely equal on the feet. I think Benoit St. Denis is also going to use kicks to keep distance. And I think he's going to eventually get it to the end of the cage, where he's just going to hold him against the cage and wear him down and beat up on him. And then I think he's going to get the takedown after wearing Poirier down, and then grind out a fairly convincing decision. I don't know if he'll get the finish, but I could see a world where he pounds Poirier out, and we're like, wow, is this the end for Poirier? And then it starts becoming that end of his career where he has a few more fights. Poirier's had a great career, he's a fantastic fighter, but I think a bit like Burns, you know, he's just coming to that point where the top people in the division are going to start outclassing him. And this is going to be, I feel like, the beginning of that story. So this is one I think a lot of people are going to lose money on betting Poirier, because that line, I mean, is there value there? I don't think there is, really. 280, sorry. I can't do the maths in my head right now, but whatever percentage of the time that means he wins, like 20% or something, I don't think he wins that often. So I would take Benoit St. Denis or pass. I personally would pass on this fight. Then we go to the main event. Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. So this is one where everyone's going to be betting O'Malley. Like, everyone I know who is into MMA, who doesn't bet, or if they do bet, they just throw a little bit of money on. Almost threw my phone there. They throw like a little bit of money on every week just for a bit of fun. They're all on Sean O'Malley, and they cannot conceive that anyone would bet against him. And then I'll bring up the point that Cheeto's already beat him once. And there is a lot of cope and like, yeah, but that was just a lucky leg kick. He rolled his ankle, you know. He rolled his ankle because Cheeto kicked his leg and he could not feel his leg. So people are taking that win away from Cheeto, and even Sean acknowledges, you know, yeah, fair enough, he got me. Which I like from Sean. I think that's a positive trait if you're backing him, because it shows humility and that he understands it wasn't a fluke. He's got to be very careful. I think Sean, for the division, is really good. He's got a lot of length. He's got power behind that length. He's calm as well. So I think Cheeto's the better athlete and has got the better cardio. But where Sean's quite calm, he doesn't use as much energy. So he has a style where he can preserve his cardio for when he needs it. The long limbs as well, there's so many advantages to that, especially against someone like Cheeto, who he's going to keep away. And I feel like there is a possibility that Cheeto just will not be able to get in on him. However, you look at the odds, 1.36 for O'Malley, 3.25 for Cheeto. Cheeto's already beaten him. Cheeto gets better as the fight goes on. His cardio's insane. He's powerful. He can finish anyone in the division. At those odds, like, you take that every single day. There are a lot of people as well who are fading, the majority of people who are picking O'Malley, saying Cheeto, and if Cheeto wins, it's going to be later in the fight. I do like that consensus, but I can also see a world where Cheeto gets stuck in straight away and hurts O'Malley. He's going to have confidence right from the beginning. Right after, he's like finished Sean before, right? He trains extremely hard as well, which is always going to give you confidence. O'Malley, like you saw at the press conference, he seems very focused on his brand and image, which is fantastic. You need to do that. You're a businessman in this day and age of mixed martial arts. But this is a big test in front of him, and part of me feels like he's focused on the wrong thing. And he seemed a bit deflated when he came out. But everyone was chanting for Cheeto. They did chant for him a bit. But I feel like he's a bit like, oh, come on, man. Like, I'm the star. I think maybe he's believing his own hype a little bit too much. And I think this fight is going to be very difficult. What I mentioned earlier, when we started talking about cardio and, you know, people getting tired and getting worn out, so I think it's Liam's MMA picks, something like that, mentioned that in O'Malley's fights, there are points that he seems to gas out, and he does fight through it. So it's not like he gasses out and then fades, but there's a point where it's like he's breathing heavy, and he's trying to get a breather, and then the next round he'll have his second win. It happened in the Yan fight, and I think the commentary even commented on it. But Yan couldn't get in on him, and I think Yan also, I don't think he had the power in the weight class to really punish him there. Chito does. If Chito sees that he's sucking air, and he seems to be having a hard time, Chito's going to advance on him and just walk him down and just start landing heavy punches on him. Or heavy kicks, like we've seen him knock people out with his kicks, corralling them into that high kick. He's going to do something like that, I feel. And I think he's going to stick it on O'Malley and not let him escape. He's going to seize the opportunity. I think people are talking about like the first few rounds being O'Malley's, later rounds being Chito Vera's. I can see that happening, and I can also see Chito doing well, or better than people expect. I can also see Chito really struggling for 2 or 3 rounds to get in on Sean and getting frustrated. There's so many things that can happen, but when I look at it, I think Chito's got the better cardio. I think he's got psychological advantage to already winning the fight before. I think he's got the leg kicks, which really could disrupt Sean's game. It can make him a sitting duck for the power that Chito has. Chito's got the power. Sean has power as well. They both have, but Chito's chin is just completely elite. So if it gets into a slugfest where they're exchanging strikes, I kind of like Chito's opportunity to drop Sean. I think he'll be a bit more clever with that. I think it's going to be a case of volume versus power in this instance, where Sean's going to use that length to try and outpoint him, and then maybe try and accumulate damage to get a finish. And I think the finish just isn't going to come. And later in the fight, Chito's going to take over. I think Chito will get a late stoppage on Sean, or what will happen is rounds 3, 4, and 5 he'll finish. He'll take. Maybe even rounds 4 and 5 he'll start dominating and have a very dominant round, and it will be a very, very, very close decision. I don't know why, I just feel like Chito's going to finish Sean. I don't know why I feel like that. But again, the majority of people are going to be betting on Sean O'Malley. He's got the name, he's got the brand, you know, all the young kids and the newer fan base really like him. Like, he's got big pink hair and a pink Lambo and this wild style and his lifestyle. You know, meanwhile, Chito just focuses on training. He trains cardio like an absolute animal. He's got a very good skill set. You know, he seems to be focused on winning. O'Malley seems to be focused on building his brand. So that's just something I didn't like in the press conference, which was like, it doesn't really factor in much. It's like an extra 1%, but it feels like everything's coming together. It's making me more confident in that play. So I would pick Chito Vera at those odds. Remember, if you want to make money betting sports, you bet the value. You never bet who you think's going to win. MMA's a bit different, but most sports, there's very little value in favourites usually. And most people bet the biggest favourite thinking, oh, that's the easy way to make money. But the profit that you make is low enough that the times they lose, it cancels out the profit. It's actually betting the other side, the underdogs, where you make profit. Even if you don't win, you know, you can win less than 50% of your bets and make great profit if you're betting on big underdogs. So it's never about getting a good win-loss ratio, unless most of the time you're picking evens. It's about a good ROI, a good profit. And at those odds, you want to take Chito Vera or pass, in my opinion. I know a lot of people are going to disagree and going to go for Sean. Sean might even win, but at 1.36 odds, if they fought 100 times, I don't think you'd make profit from betting those odds. So this weekend's going to be amazing. As the title of the video says, be very careful if you're betting this main card, because a lot of people are going to lose a ton of money on this card. We're going to make a ton of money. If you want to be part of it, join the Telegram. I'm going to have some picks this weekend for the UFC, free in there. Or you can join my VIP. I've already got about 9 plays now locked in for the UFC, and I've got a few more coming today as well. So let's get it.